You're listening to Cosmic Consciousness, the show that connects with today's way showers and conscious advocates who use real-life superpowers to catapult human evolution.
Welcome, Soul Family, to Cosmic Consciousness, coding the new human for the new earth. I am your host, Jewels Arnes, and I am so excited to introduce our guest, Dennis Langlais, with the Ranking Mastery. Dennis was born and raised in New England. He moved to California at age 18 to pursue a career in BMX freestyle, where he was lucky enough to travel the world while competing in the highest level in BMX stunt world. That is so cool. With this sport, he got a crash course in discipline, hard work, and the ability to tap into a mindset of a peak performance. Success requires a particular mindset, discipline, and the ability to be flexible and change direction in an instant. Dennis is no different than most entrepreneurs, and over a course of his life, faced layers of challenges that he's had to work through. Ironically, these challenges weaved together revealed the next thing using the right lens and seeing these challenges through what was the making of Ranking Mastery. A misstep became a revolutionary new way to create a website that on the fly creates website pages based on the collection of words your customers search on the web every day. Dennis is consistently been able to manage and adapt his skills and use them to create success in all areas of his life. Welcome to the show, Dennis. I'm so excited to hear more about. Okay, I just want to start with the BMX thing. So we're so excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. This is really exciting. It's always fun to talk mindset, right? I mean, we're always adjusting our minds to challenge in life, right? And yeah, the BMX thing is a really exciting part of my life that's, shaped everything I do going forward. You know, when you do something when you're young, I've always said if I had a boy or a girl, I would teach them how to play golf because you're shaping that swing for the rest of your life. But being a professional athlete at the ages of 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, it shaped my abilities or mindset going forward.
So what would you say was the biggest takeaway with that? Because I know how much my daughter, she's a national volleyball player, and I know it takes a lot of dedication, but there's something about learning to stay in that flow that she has learned to do through doing a professional sport. So I'd love to hear kind of what your take is on that.
And thank you for that great bio, by the way. So, in being on hundreds of podcasts and being a host of hundreds of podcasts, I've learned that my gift was the understanding of peak performance action, peak performance simulation. So as a professional BMX bike rider, I had to train, of course, 10 hours a day, every day, single day, whatever, just like any athlete has to do. You have all these criteria you have to work on: your physical, your mental, and your game, right? So, but you can kind of, and we experience it every day, right, is you can kind of practice or work just kind of like in default, like with no purpose behind it. So the best example I've been using lately that kind of people can understand is we can all go and take a putter and a golf ball and hit a putt into a putt that's about a foot away, right? I mean, you and I could go right now, we could hit it 100 times in a row in that hole. No problem. We wouldn't even have to think twice about it, and that's default. But if I said, Jules, I want $1,000. I'm going to bet you $1,000 if you could make that putt from a foot, it changes everything. So now you're in a real time situation. And so when I would practice or use my mindset, I would always try to simulate that $1,000 putt or that trick or that, speaking on stage, whatever. You have to simulate that in real, and there has to be a cost to it, right? So in the case of that's $500 or $5,000 or something that really changes the ability for you to excel.
So it's so funny because as you're talking, I'm just connecting to the energy of that experience, and I can feel my heart rate starting to beat faster, and I'm getting nervous, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what if I don't make it? So So in that moment, you're talking about the mindset. So what is it that you do in that moment to calm the nerves?
You fail, right? Or you succeed. It's very simple, right? You fail or you succeed. And it's easy. I guess it's the idea of trying to, adopt that default mindset in real time. So we just experienced the Super Bowl, right? So, those guys were realized when they stepped on that field and the ball was hiked for the first time. This is a different game than all the 12 or 15 games they had before this. It's a different thing. It's you're done. This is all. You may never go back to the Super Bowl again. The Chiefs have been to the Super Bowl once in 50 years. You have a 1 in a 50-year chance, right? That's a lifetime of Olympics. That's a lifetime. So you have to, peak perform and have the mindset to and take all that in, that pressure and that intensity, and perform in those situations. It's incredible.
It is incredible. And by the way, I am a Chiefs fan by default. I'm not really into football, but my dad was actually a Red Coat for 25 years. So he was very excited about the Super Bowl, which I know you were kind of bummed probably being there.
Well, I'm from Patriots, so we've got enough. It's default for them, because they've been there 50% of the time. So
right. Oh my gosh, that's true. That is true. So I want to talk more about this, but we're just going to go to a really quick break here. But before we do, why don't you let everybody know how to find you and learn more about you before we go to break?
Oh, thank you for that. So Dennis Langlais here. I am the owner of Ranking Mastery. The rankingmastery.com is one of my websites. I'm also on the podcast, The 5-Minute Bark.
Lovely. And we'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Dawn Rekla, Executive Director of Superpower Experts. And we want to thank each of you for making Superpower Up the #1 podcast network for personal development and spiritual growth. Because people like you have the courage to say that mindfulness, healthy living, disrupting reality, the pursuit of consciousness, responsible entrepreneurship, and radical parenting matter. We now amass over 1 million downloads monthly in more than 90 countries. Our numbers keep growing because there are far more people willing to live divergently than mass media wants to acknowledge. For you, the change makers, the light bearers, the way showers, we say thank you. If you're ready to take the next step in your evolution, go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the Superpower quiz. And as Neva Lee Rekla, our youngest podcaster, likes to remind us, remember, we all have superpowers and we can change the world.
Okay, so we are back with Dennis and we are talking about mindset. And I keep coming up with all these questions because I keep waiting for this special tool. So I was thinking a little bit earlier, I'm getting ready to do a pitch for the Summit Media coming up. And it's so funny because I'm fine when I do it in my head, but then when I go to say it out loud, I get all nervous. And so the first thing I think is, how do I calm down my heart rate? How do I become centered? How can I do this without having the chemical response going on in my body? Do you have some sort of ritual that you would do before you would go out and do some of this really intense work?
Well, I have some good news for you. I've actually had people request that they train them, coach them. They paid me to coach them for that 90-second pitch you're going to do.
Oh, wonderful.
So I took them to a six-week class. And one of the things, it's interesting, and it's very interesting because there's that Super Bowl situation. I've been there. You get super nervous, super nervous. And the only secret I can tell you right now that would change the whole dynamic of that, and you know it already, is the first 1, 2, or 3 steps that you take to approach that stage. If they are grounded, right? If you acknowledge that you're grounding them, feeling your heel to your palm, to your foot, to your toes, walking toward that stage, you'll have that automatic groundness when you walk up there. And it'll take everything else away. I mean, most of the nervousness will go away because when you're grounded, you can throw your energy much better, right? It's simple as if somebody come knock you and you can't. So your voice is grounded, your energy is grounded when you go to that stage, and then when you stand there, the best thing in the world is understanding how to use pauses, right? So, and you always go to the best and finest restaurants, and they give you just a little bit of food, right? And when we communicate on a podcast or on a stage like you're talking about, the least amount of food you give them to chew on, the better it is. So, and another thing I would help people understand is, what if there was a tidal wave that was going to take over the world, and you were on top of the mountain, and you were the king of the city, and and everybody's gathered, and you had to give them a message. And what would that message be? You only have 1 minute to say what you think. So it's almost like the value of each word is $1 million per word, right? So if you had to pay $1 million per word, what would you say, right? So some of these things can kind of come into value when you're trying to get that message out there.
I love that. But the first thing that comes to me is that nobody understands what I'm saying. So I have to also learn to speak in a way that the normal people out there would understand. And I think that's been my biggest problem, is just communicating in everyday language, which I know a lot of the community that is listening can relate to that, because I think once you reach a level of consciousness, you kind of take on a specific language that not everybody understands. And those are like our key codes.
So I have the ranking mastery people, and I've been taking on these 25 or 50 people and I have a person that's in consciousness and creating some stuff. And the biggest problem, I just went and I had to sit there and be part of their session that they're teaching and stuff like that. And the hardest part is for them, I'm like, you have to start at a 3rd grade level and graduate your people, because you're using words and actions that people are not going to be comfortable with. In this case, it was called the death man pose. And okay, I'm not sure if I want to even do this, So for even me, as knowing them and how brilliant and amazing these human beings are, I've known one of the guys for years, and this other guy. But when they started this thing, they had this breathing thing they did, and like breathing really loud, kind of like going to yoga, and you have that yoga teacher that's breathing really loud, and like, I don't want to go to that level right now because I'm not, I'm not comfortable yet. There's people around and different things. So it's taking people with your words and your actions at a 3rd grade level. And okay, do you understand that level? Great. Let's go to 5th grade. Let's go to 6th grade. And then that helps you sell your product, your service, or you as a person in general. Because what do you know? Like in ranking mastery, like using the word SEO, I figured everybody knew it. And my consensus is no, I don't understand what that is. I've heard the word, but I have no clue what it is. I'm like, okay, so I have to back up. And I do my trainings, as you kind of know, right? As I can really try to associate different things so that they can graduate to in the education. So.
Well, I know I'm going through that personally with you. And I think I even said the words, I just don't know what I'm doing. Right. And you have been wonderful. And it's so fun to see how the mindset of being a professional athlete has actually brought you to this place. So let's go to that place. Let's talk a little bit about what ranking mastery is.
Well, ranking mastery is an accident, actually, a big accident. And, I know this podcast is about mindset and consistently practicing that. And as many entrepreneurs have experienced in their lives, I've had the wealth, and then I've had the bottom of the barrel. I've lost everything. I've had anything from, an AMG, driving around, having fine dinners every day, to going like, I can't even buy my girlfriend a drink, and it's pretty embarrassing and humbling, and having to borrow money from friends. And so I've experienced both things, but it's understanding and really harnessing the lessons you're learning in life. Because if I compared that to being a professional athlete, well, I'm going to learn this new stunt. And I already know that I'm just not going to be able to learn that in a week. I'm not going to learn that in a month. I'm going to learn it in 6 months. So I know that there. But in mindset, we just think that we just either are delivered with it, or we can just learn it in a few minutes, and then we can act, and we can all of a sudden have millions of dollars. And of course, we see around us, everything that we're told is like, you can learn this in 50 seconds. And everything's like instant gratification. And just you and I, as entrepreneurs, know that is not possible. Even on, it's just not. So you have to just stay with it and believe in yourself and adopt a strengthening mindset. If you can improve how you think and how you react and how you simulate going forward 1% a day, they say, that's incredible. So
is that really what it is, the 1%?
I don't know what it is. I never counted, but it's, I mean, the biggest, I think if I had to go and redo my life, I mean, I've heard this a million times, like growing up, is don't shoot for the home run,
Yeah, and that's giving me chills. So it's like going back to the process and not the end result. And, it's funny because a lot of coaches are starting to really focus on that, because before, an old way of coaching would be results. Like, what are you going to do for me? What are you going to do for the team? And now it's more about the process of getting to the result is what's being taught. So even in the coaching realm of professional sports and probably unprofessional sports or more recreational sports, that's becoming a bigger thing. And I have to remind myself of that all the time. I'm sure you do too.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about what kind of your daily life would look like as you continue to focus on what your goal is. And then why don't you talk a little bit about where you see your ranking mastery going?
Definitely. I wanted to share one little thing that I think the audience would really kind of help, because they saw it and they witnessed it in the last 10 or 12 years. There's an athlete called Tiger Woods, the golfer. And we saw how he was just absolutely on top of the world. And by being on top of the world and having $1 billion, he engaged in some wrongdoing, so to speak. We'll just say whatever it is. But the whole narrative and news was he'll never come back, or can he come back, or he is. And all through that time of when he kind of adjusted and grounded himself again and started moving toward back, overcoming physical things and sexual things and different things he had to get through, he always would say it's the process, and nobody would understand what he meant by the words process. And I recently have realized, like, I see now what he meant by process, because it's just not going to come. He's just not going to come back overnight. There's a process of moving forward. And I was just talking to a friend. He was starting a new company, starting this wellness drink company. And I'm like, dude, when you build the business plan, you have to build in 5 or 6 hurdles that you're gonna address as you go. You're not going to know them now, and you're not going to know them later. You're going to run into them like a brick wall 5 or 6 times when you grow a business. Am I right on that? How many times have you ran into brick walls, right?
For sure. It happens. And you're just like, wait, where did that come from?
Yeah. So going back to the ranking mastery, I had developed this website to generate leads. And it was for my BMX company I have. And of course, I was trying to hit the home run, right? So I developed this really cool software that would generate leads. I would basically make a directory of all my competition. And I created it, launched it, and put it out there. One day, on accident, Google started indexing it. And all of a sudden, I'm getting all these emails and calls from people saying, hey, I didn't say you could use my information on your website. Your website's ranking higher than mine, and I want you to delete that. And I'm like freaking out. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm giving you recognition for next to pennies, and you want to get rid of it? So, but that's their mindset, right? They didn't think that, hey, if I could he can get me a lead for $10, or I can buy it my own for $150. There's no mindset. So I was really stressed, and I'm like, okay, this is the end of the world. I'm getting a lawsuit here, and people are starting to send me cease and desist letters and all kinds of stuff. But I didn't realize, and that directory was a compilation of all my failures, because I had made many websites before and different technologies and different things. And each one was just off by 1 degree, right? And by building that, it turned into ranking mastery, because it was a something that helped businesses rank their business. So I curated it, and I took some resources from the BMX thing, and resources from the podcast, and resources from the directories. All these resources of my failures became ranking mastery, which is now a product you're enjoying and or going to enjoy in the future. And my clients are starting to enjoy. It's a brand new product, just came out pretty much officially in January, but it's just incredible what the universe and sticking to my guns and going through the process of all of that has delivered me.
And I have to say, even though I still don't quite understand it, there was never a question that this is something incredible. So when you know something's incredible, even when you don't understand it, that's saying a lot because, most people need the evidence. I want the evidence. I want the results. It wasn't even that I needed that. Just hearing what you were saying was enough to know that this is something I want to do.
Yeah. It's got the fundamentals and it's just like 1 + 1 = 2 at this point for me. Recently, I visited with a client last week, I think, and he's like, my website's getting more traffic. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Because you take people in and you're trying to get them to do the work and think like you're thinking in this process, and it's working for them. And then there's these things called snippets that Google's been doing, where you answer a question in a certain way, and all of a sudden they put you at the very top. So you kind of skip the line to the top, and not only do you answer the question for the audience that's searching, but you become the influencer for Google. So if you really think about it, Google's like a podcast. It's like this podcast here, where it's a place where they'll promote you if you say the right content.
Which is it's so incredible, because if you can just take what you just said and put that into real life, it just shows you that our words are so important. The questions we ask is so important, and how we deliver information is so important. So you can make that a life lesson right there.
Yeah. I have a question for you.
Sure.
What motivated you to do this podcast?
It's the one place I feel as though I can go and be as out there as I want to be, because Tonya has created a platform for that 1%. And so we talked about earlier about having to pick our words that people understand. And I'm not saying that maybe I talk in a way that maybe not everybody can understand. And this is so brand new. So I'm only just dipping my toe into the possibilities, but I find it's my playground. It's where I get to go and really tap into some really high frequency, amazing people that have really interesting stories like you. Mindset isn't something that people think about every day. And to be able to just share even the possibility of what that is like it just feeds my soul.
It's incredible. And the answer is right on for me as well. On my podcast, I've had over 400 guests, and I really didn't make a lot of money with my podcast, but I made a lot of connections. Mm-hmm. 2, I'm able to be on this podcast with you and speak in a different language that I wouldn't have before I had the podcast. I've become a great listener, right? Because you cannot take up somebody's time for an hour and then not be like respond to their questions. You have to hear their question and inform it, and then carry it on, 1 for yourself and 2 for the audience. So I'm with you on that. It's like it's an incredible playground to gain knowledge, practice speaking, learn, and have fun.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about listening, because that's one of my favorite things to do, is to listen to what somebody's saying and hear what they're saying in a way that it's forming a question to go deeper. So it's like, oh my gosh, that was so awesome that you said that, but I want to learn more.
Yeah. I call that, and this is great for your audience, I call this 5 layers deep. So I had a perfect example is I met this gal at a restaurant, and she says, we're talking, and I'm like, oh, what do you do? She's like, oh, I do charity work. But she just kind of just said it. And when you say something, you mean it, or it's really got character behind it. It changes the dynamic of how it's said. And so I use my podcast, mentality or mindset, I should say. And I took her 5 layers deep. So I kept on asking the question, but when she'd answer, I'd pull pieces out of that question. and take it deeper, and then take it deeper and take it deeper. So a generic example would be, hey, Dennis, where are you from? I'm from Massachusetts. Okay. I've been to Massachusetts. What part? Well, I'm near Boston. Oh, I know. My God, I love Boston. Well, I'm actually not from Boston. I'm from Worcester. Oh yeah. My sister went to Worcester, school in, well, all right. I'm from a little town called Whitensville that has mills for miles, and there's a movie formed there. And so that's a different answer, right? It's the real answer that we really kind of enjoy, that we want to listen to. So this lady, it turned out, so taking her through that, the reason she was doing, I'm getting chills. I brought her to tears pretty much, right? So, because you're taking her there. And the really reason why she was doing charity is because she could not have kids. And this was her child, so to speak.
Oh.
So when you talk to somebody, it doesn't have to be on a podcast. It could be the next adventure in your day, right? Anybody listening here today, if you go on a dinner with somebody and you're talking to somebody and you hear them kind of say something, you can take it 5 layers deep and just change their life, change how that dynamic of that conversation is, and really create some amazing mindset there.
Absolutely. And then the word that keeps coming to mind as you're going through that is creating deeper connection, because the more we find out about people, the deeper just that root goes. It's like we're connecting at the heart at that point. It's not just words anymore.
Yeah, it's not fluff.
Yeah. Which we lack, I think, a lot in our just daily lives. There's not a lot of people that want to take the time to find out about another person. And that's another great thing about doing these podcasts is not only do I get to find out more about you, but everybody else does too.
Well, you got your fluff podcasts, right? Where you just kind of hear a lot of nothing, right? But you hear a lot but I mean, you could tell a certain strategy to somebody, but if it's so fluff, you can't grab onto it. Or going to the new media Sunday, like you're talking about, how many, you can probably think right now how many people were fluff on that stage and how many people were just connecting you, right? So that grounding, right? Having that idea and that mindset that I need to walk in a certain way and breathe in a certain way and talk in a certain way. I could say 3 words and sometimes I can change the entire planet. They say a butterfly can turn into a tornado, but how it's done, it can reverberate, I don't know the word, but go throughout the whole world. So, the greatest speakers in the world, if you go on YouTube and you really watch the greatest speakers, they say so little, but it's so powerful.
It can be so challenging. I think I noticed that for myself because I'm like, well, they won't understand it. They won't understand it. I have to explain it. But it's not about that. It's just about giving them enough information where it gets them to start thinking. And we talked a few times, and I know we were doing this in a different way, but for some reason it's coming back to me now about processing, about moving through the process. And I do that a lot just with my conscious work of actually processing through the different thoughts and where they're coming from and being able to bring it back into kind of what you say, grounding. Well, is this important? Is this something that I need to believe? And is it a belief system that I can change? So tell me a little bit about how doing that internal processing has helped you be successful in your business.
I think it's, some switch was turned on somewhere, right? Even when I was a little kid. I remember when I was 4 years old watching TV and seeing a baseball player on TV, and I'm like, I can do that. There's that switch and drive. But relating to kind of what you were talking about there, if we, when I coach, this is one of the things I do is like, I have them stand, back here, and I have them imitate that they have a hand out. And when you're having a conversation, that hand is there, and you're not making the person grab your hand and take them, but you're just kind of like using your fingertips, and you can see this, they can't, but using your fingertips to kind of invite them into what you're saying. And then whatever you say, right, Jules, they will want you to explain it. They will want to listen a little more because you're guiding them with words or emotions or breath. In the case of a podcast, it's breath and clarity and all that stuff. But I've spoken in front of thousands, like tens of thousands of people. I have a school assembly program I used to do, and I used to travel. I've been to every city and state in the country. So, and I turned it into a game because I had to speak motivational speaking, right? And you're checking the kids, they're loud and they're busy. And I would play this game. I'd fiddle with words and emotions and movements. And it's just incredible how you can just take people in, but just using this. So even though you say you're talking in different languages, you can also play with that and make them curious with your hands and motions and breath and so on and so forth. I encourage you to play with that. Play with that a lot. Ground yourself, of course, and just never be satisfied with the result. Just keep playing with it, and then you'll see like magic happen, like chills in conversations.
You're giving me chills right now. And as you're doing all this, I'm like, oh, it's like an art.
Well, I kind of did a little of that there, right? So I'm kind of bringing you in and just making you feel comfortable with it, and then bring it in more. It's not rocket science. It's just real, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Well, so Dennis, we're kind of going to the end of our time here. Yeah. Is there any one last thing that you would like to share with everyone?
Well, I think that I've tried to share a bunch here today, but I just think I'm going to encourage the listeners to really take some moments in your day and try some of the exercises we tried here today on the podcast or talked about here on the podcast, and see what they do for your mindset, for your conscious way of living, and the results that have. Simply just walking down the street in a certain way will change your energy. I play with this all the time when I go to, I'm single, so I go to restaurants and bars and different things. And it's interesting how if I can walk and I feel like I move mountains when I walk, and people move out of the way. So there's different things you can really do for yourself. You can be strong if you're not feeling confident by walking strong. Feel that energy, and if you're not confident speaking, accelerate it. Just do it and act on it. Tell your mind that you have the opportunity to do it. Number one, and two, that you have the ability, because you do. If you can speak, whether you have a peaked voice or a strong voice or a bad, you can work it toward it. So anything you do, whether it's in sports or in your daily life or in love, we can talk about love and how that can get really passionate too in the same way. So it reflects to everything.
That's just amazing. Like, gosh, as you were thinking, I was like, oh, I had the question there, and then it just kind of left me. But
I do that all the time. I hate that.
So let me just think, as it was important. Let me think if it will come to me. It was something about, I know what it was. So you were like just doing it anyways. And I think that is such an important part for a great way to kind of close this out, because I have this saying that if you live your life and you're never afraid to do anything or do the next thing, then you're probably not challenging yourself, and you're not going to go to that next level and learn more about yourself, about your life, and excel in life. And so I have this saying that if it feels scary and it's not going to hurt you, then you should do it. I say that to my kids all the time. If it's scary, I say, oh, that's good, because that means you're challenging yourself to be better. And I love the way you said that, in just simple ways of just walking through a bar and just being bigger than you feel like you are. That's such a great, amazing way of saying that.
We're so scared, I was with somebody last night, and he's like, oh my God, that girl was so beautiful. I'm like, go talk to her. Well, it's not classy to talk to her. What do you mean it's not classy? Whose rules are you playing by? I mean, she's gone. You'll never see her again. So, and I had some guy on my podcast, he said that exactly that. He said, I met this girl and I just felt this connection with her, and I let her go. And he said, I'm never going to do that again. And now he is so willing to just talk to anybody and fall on his face and get a bruise and bump his nose and break his leg. Not literally, but he's willing to give that option, because you can say, I went after my dream. I went after my dream girl, or I went after my dream business, my dream goal. If you don't try it, if you don't fail, failure's there for a purpose, because if you fail, you're like, okay, there might be somebody else that comes in the door. Now the jitters are gone. I can just keep going. I can keep going. We could just keep going, right? I mean, in business, we just keep going, and then meeting that person, you just keep going. It's like, it actually becomes fun in a game.
And I think the more you just keep going, like you're saying, the easier it is to do it. And the easier it is to make mistakes and be like, oh, whatever. Yeah. That wasn't so bad, actually.
And then all of a sudden now you're attractive because people are like, wow, he or she had the guts to do that. And like, wow, I feel secure. I feel safe. I want to have a conversation. Of course, when you meet anybody, everybody's got their guard up. That's just part of life, business or personal.
That is true. And what an awesome way to end the show, because I always end it with go and live to your highest potential. And this is such a big part of doing that. So Dennis, thank you again. Tell us one more time how we can find you.
Great. Dennis Langlais here, Ranking Mastery. It's my invention I talked about on this podcast. And you can just Google me, Dennis Langlais, Langlais, and lots of stuff will come up. It's all good. So thank God. And on my 5-Minute Bark podcast, you're welcome to listen there as well. But that's how you can find me.
Wonderful. And thank you so much again, Dennis. And thank all of you for listening and supporting the Superpower Up community. And I'm sending you all lots of high vibes as you step into your highest potential. Till next time.
Are you ready to discover your superpowers? Go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the superpower quiz today.